So today we're going to take a look at sort of our next evolution of sort of trip packing and how we kind of store stuff, right? So at first we talked about gear at hand, which is sort of in the front, and things within arm's reach. So the next place that we stop is gear that we want to have close, but we don't need to be able to reach from the driver's seat, right? So there's a few things that I like to have around, and obviously everybody kit's a little bit different based on the trip style. But for the most part, things like I typically keep Clorox wipes attached to the back of my seat, so I've got something that I can wipe myself or the kids off with if we get messy. And I want that reasonably close to whoever's in here, but I don't need to be able to grab it from the driver's seat, right? We typically have an extra handheld radio, so if the kids want to go do something, I don't have to fumble through the back. I can just pull it off, hand it to them, they can go. Or if you're in kind of, if you end up in the deep water, you've got a spotter, bam, you can hand the radio to the spotter, and they can give you a hand. We store most of that on the back seat. That's kind of the way our system works. From there, I've got things like dog leashes in here. I've got a set of gloves in here. I've got bug spray, sunscreen, because nothing ruins any trip of any style, like getting eaten by mosquitoes and burnt to death. So I kind of keep that sort of stuff so I can make sure that myself and the kids are covered on that front. From there, I typically think about things like lighting. In this pouch you'll find I have my little Revel Gear twinkle lights. And one of the things, when you're setting up camp in the dark or in the evening, I want to be able to find that stuff, so I don't want to have to hunt for it, and I want to be able to get the lights on if I start cooking pretty quickly or if I start getting stuff out. So that gives me the ability, I don't have to search through drawers or bins or whatever. It just happens to be attached to the seat, and I know where that's at. Typically, right here is normally a stack of headlights. I'm not sure, I think they got maybe moved to a different vehicle, but under most circumstances, I keep 3 or 4 headlights attached here for the same reason. I'm going to get out at night, I'm going to set up camp. Bam, I want to be able to put the headlights on. From there, the other place that we store a lot of at-hand stuff is up here in the attic. So this is a 80 series Land Cruiser. So up here, like you'll find, I've got an extra set of gloves up here. Actually, I have 2 extra sets of gloves up here right now. Kind of winter gloves versus kind of work gloves down here. If I needed to, pull cable with a winch or something, they'd be down here. And then I've got an extra blanket up here. I typically will keep rain gear up here, stuff like that. But again, I don't need this. I don't need to be able to grab this from the driver's seat normally. But at the same time, if I want to stop and be able to get it, this is kind of where I keep that sort of stuff. Light, fluffy stuff that I'm not worried about if it happens to fall out or you're in a wreck or something. It's not going to do any damage. And then the same thing, like this stuff is all held down, right? So it's all kind of married to the seat. So if anything happens, this stuff is attached so it doesn't go flying around the vehicle. But again, you can still have it, you can still find it. And it's about finding that stuff, right? So that when you get to camp or if you have to stop and you have to do something, you've got the ability to just kind of look back here and go, oh, here's my headlight, or oh, here's my camp lights, or oh my gosh, we've got a mess, we need to wipe this off, or quick grab the dog, he's got to go to the bathroom in a hurry, I don't want to have to hunt for that leash, gloves, radios, that kind of stuff. So you also find, like, we keep road flares. I keep some road flares typically at the bottom of a seat, so that we've got, again, same thing. If we need to, if the wood is really wet and you're in a crisis situation or a bad scenario, or there's been an accident and you need to run road flares, you need to put road flares out, bam, we've got road flares kind of sitting there. And road flares have a lot of neat uses. And we've talked about trash bags and this kind of stuff in the other videos. So if you see stuff in here that I'm not talking about, it's because we've kind of gone over it in other videos. So before we talked about gear at hand, which isn't reach of the driver. So then the next piece is like gear that's easily accessible, but doesn't need to be within reach. And that's kind of what this is. Easily accessible. I can find it. I don't have to hunt through the vehicle for it. I know right where it's at. And it's kind of kitted to that trip. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is sort of as we get further back in the vehicle. So it's going to be stored gear that we don't need, right? Or that we don't need regularly. So it's all the gear that you want to have, but you aren't always going to need on a regular basis. So that typically goes into like cooking stuff and things like that, heavier recovery gear, things like that. So stuff that you don't need at hand, stuff that you don't need necessarily easily accessible, especially for sort of normal kind of bumming around 2-track, that sort of thing, camping trips. That all the rest of the stuff kind of goes to the back, and we're going to talk about that next. So if you missed part 1, you can find it right here, and when we actually get part 3 done, you'll be able to find it right there.